What is up, everybody? This is the track breakdown for the next single off the album Sin, Future Sight, which will be out March 24th, so it should be pretty soon to when I release this video. And the album that it is a part of, Sin, comes out on April 7th. I'm super excited for that. And I wanted to just give a track breakdown of this one before the single actually came out, so you could kind of get an idea of all the elements that went into making the full track, how they all fit together, and kind of what's going on, so you understand the track and maybe you'll enjoy it a little bit more at the end if you go, oh yeah, I remember how he did that thingy. It's a relatively simple track in terms of structure. We got a pretty simple, like, kind of intro-y verse, chorus, bridge starts here, goes all the way to here, and like an out chorus type deal. I like really long bridges, and that's why the bridge is like, basically the length of everything else. But you'll see why. It's very different from the rest of the track. And starting with like the main element of the track is this freeze, which if you don't, I don't know if it's called freeze in every other DAW, I think it is, where you have like MIDI and then you basically bounce it out to audio. A freeze of a synth that I did all sorts of stuff to. And I basically use it as the pillow that the rest of the track sits on. And there's a couple different versions. There's the verse version and the chorus version. They're mainly just EQ'd differently and at different volume levels, but this is what that sounds like. So it's kind of this noisy, really washy sound. There's a lot of EQ that goes on with this. This top bridge one basically is just a low cut to stay out of the way of the bass. And then this one has some funkier EQ, low cut in here, but then inside of Neutron, we got some really wacky EQ right here, boosting a little bit of this and cutting this more mid-range area to get out of the way of some of the percussion. And if you'll notice, this is set to what's called unmask. So basically what that does is you can connect two instances of Neutron like together and basically say, hey, you guys, get out of the way of each other. So I also have Neutron on the bass. And so that's what allows my bass to push through kind of all this like washy lower end noise. And so this provides me a great little chord progression of some sort. Music theory is not my forte, even though I've been going to music school for 4 years. But I think it's great. And this is kind of like the groundwork. And on top of that groundwork, the next and other main element would be the bass. I love the bass sound in this track. I had just bought new bass strings and like put them on, and this was the first thing I did was track this song with the bass. And so if you're a bassist or a guitarist, new bass strings is fantastic. So this is what it sounds like. Like, it's so snappy. I love it. I love that bass sound. And so this is the bass. It basically is this, and the chords, especially the bass though, because it carries even throughout the bridge, are what keep the track in, the normal human universe. And then everything else kind of changes a good bit. We have the ever-present riot kick making a return for the main percussion element. And you know what that sounds like if you've watched the other videos, but I'll just play it real quick. And with the bass. And I love keeping finger noise and stuff like that, especially like I have more looser sections here. You'll see I really get rid of all that stuff, like when you get into more sections like this. But that's the main percussion element. There's not too much complicated, at least, percussion going on in this track. You'll see I have this snare right here. That was temporary. It's not actually, you can see it's muted. It's not actually in the main mix. The other thing is one of my favorite Ableton kits is bins and barrels. So it's like a bunch of like weird pieces of metal that people hit. And this is what it sounds like. And very little processing on that. It already has a lot of processing built into the kit itself. So you can see here I have like filter settings, space settings, stereo width, and then I also added an additional waves S1 imager onto it to just further kind of separate it from the more standard, like the kick drum. I want the kick stay in the center, everything else kind of get out of the way. The other percussion comes from two kits, the 606 Excalibur kit, which is for the choruses, and then the Big Sun kit, which is for the bridge. So the chorus drums have a lot of processing on them. Drum bus, always drum bus, auto pan. I love the chiptune filter. It's like a part of their Redux plugin, which at the time I didn't have the, if you've seen the video about free plugins, I didn't have codec at the time, which is why I didn't use it. Chorus ensemble, which is one of the great additions from Ableton Live 11, and then R-Bass, which maybe comes on. Let me see. Yes, it does. There's one bass hit where I needed some more bass. So this is what it sounds like. Doesn't actually play it. And it sounds kind of cheesy, which I love. Like, you know, it's really vintagey sounding, and I have it pretty aggressively overdrived and panning all over the place. And I think it really fits the vibe of the song, because I got a really like almost 80s feel from this song with like the really washy synth and the really snappy bass. So that's kind of what I went with for some of the other sounds. And the final piece of kit, literally, because it's drum kit, is the Big Sun kit. Now this is going to sound a lot more aggressive, and you'll see why. Basically just drum bus and OTT, and then just some slight edits of the default settings. So this is what this kit sounds like. And you'll see here I'm automating the pitch, which gets some really fun, like I don't know, hardware store sounds, you know, which I love hardware store sounds. I think they're great. I think I literally have used like hardware tool noises as risers many times. So that's like kind of the instrumental part. You got your bass, you got your backing chords, you got your drums, and then there's two more elements, I believe. Like, and that's like basically it for instruments. So you have your guitars, and I'm saving the bridge for later because it's very different from the rest of the track. Let me solo both of these. And I'm just doing pick scrapes. That's all I'm doing. And then if you hear that in context, I really like it. So here's a first clip of like the whole song. Walls painted red. They all burn through me. It's really subtle, but I think it adds kind of a sense of urgency because you got those eighth notes running throughout it. And so I really like adding little guitar thingies like this. And also it kind of lets you know earlier in the track, hey, there's guitars in this track. We're not really gonna use them till later, but there are guitars, you know, in the studio, sure. And then the guitar feature is over here. And laying on top of all that is the vocals and the lead synth. So the lead synth I really like. It is some Ableton synth. I basically just use the Ableton synths. I have Serum, and I have Vital. I can never be bothered because Ableton's made so many great presets, and if you just add effects to them, they sound epic. So I'm, you know, affecting a lot of filters throughout it because I really don't like things to stay the same. And this is running on a pretty heavy arpeggiator. And then the number one effect being used on it is trash. So let me solo that for you. And with everything. Yeah, so I think it adds a really nice kind of shiny layer on top, which is really fun. Vocals. Vocals, as per usual, it's something different every time. So we have it triple tracked this time, not separately. I recorded all three at the same time. So it's more of like getting three different layers instead of it sounding like there's three different people in the room. One of them is just using the MDMX fuzz, and that's what this is. I'll just play one of these verses here. Expand into something new. So adds a lot of grit, a lot of width to the sound. The next one is using my Old Pints of Blood vocal chain, and that's what this one sounds like. Expand into something new. And then finally, I believe I have literally just a clean tone, which you guys, I guess, can hear this. Expand into something new. Yeah, and it's just compressed a bit for, you know, I can't not compress it. I don't sing loud enough to not be able to compress things. And so that's all the vocals, and then together they sound like this, isolated. Into something new. They're all filled with rain. So I kind of use the fuzz as like again, almost like with the chords, it's like a blanket to help it meld into everything else. And then the other two channels are really for clarity, so you know what the hell I'm saying. That's the vocals. Oh my goodness, I guess we're already to the bridge. So if you listen to this track, in the beginning, you're going to be getting more of I want to say future sight, but that's just the name of the song. I don't know what type of genre, but not metal, right? So if we listen to this right here. So very weird, very synth heavy, bass heavy. But then we go into the bridge and I transition to a metal track here. And I love it. So I'll start right here. I think I found supposed to be a savior, but now look at me. I'll let you hear the rest when you listen to the track. But I think the transition worked really well. One thing I always try to do when messing with multiple genres, which I do all the time, because I like so many different kinds of music, you know, I'll be making a house track or something with like a 4-on-the-floor kick, and then it's like, well, I want to break down. You got to keep something consistent. So that usually means you kind of take the, like for instance, the poppy synthier side of this track, and you tilt it a little heavier. So that way, once you get to the metal section, you can keep some of those elements and it works. So what I kept here was the bass tone, because that bass tone is metal as shit. Like, listen, like. Like, it cuts really well. And then again, I also used those guitars earlier, just in a very light manner, so you knew that there were guitars within the project. And so I feel like keeping at least one element kind of consistent throughout a track really helps with people being able to not be super jarred by it. Like, for instance, I kept the percussion electronic too. I didn't go to like a real sounding drum set, or I didn't completely change the bass tone. So I really try to do that to keep consistency, because also it just sounds better in my opinion. Instead of sounding like two songs like smashed together, it actually sounds like one thing that belongs within the track. And another thing, I added this actually relatively late into the track, but I also add the lead synth on top, and it sounds great over metal, so I'll play this part. Oh, bass is still so low. That's good. And I think that works great. And then when I'm going back into the synth section, it helps adding back elements that we lost. So I have this kick drum come back in, A, because it's awesome, and B, because it helps build into that next section. And then you get a really smooth transition, like right here, because you have that lead melody coming back in, or parts of it at least, that are kind of like transformed. So you get some familiarity and like a weirder section, because I know lots of people don't listen to metal. Especially lots of people that don't listen to like more synth-based music don't listen to metal, and so you gotta help them out, ease them into the transition. And then finally, I finished with an out chorus. It's just more guitars. Supposed to be safe. And that's basically the track. That's everything that's going on in here. I have some risers, which right here, it's the same riser I use in pretty much every track. It is a stock Ableton white noise riser, and usually I don't really want you to hear it that much. It's just more of a, ooh, something cool is coming, or there's about to not be as much stuff, which I usually use them more for. But that's everything in this track. It's one of my simpler mixes on the album. I think it came out to, 29 tracks. And like half of those tracks are just groups. So nothing too crazy. Hardest thing in the track was probably this editing you see here. The reason I did this editing, partially because I'm not the best guitar player in the world, but also I wanted it to sound mechanical. I wanted it to sound like, those deathcore bands that, quantize everything to like death. Like I wanted it to sound exactly like that, like mechanical sounding. And it works really well with having electronic percussion to make sure that everything is mechanical. So that's another good thing I would recommend too, is if you don't have a live drummer, don't play like you have a live drummer, because the way you play real instruments with electronic percussion that's perfectly stuck to a grid is going to be very different, just because you don't have that room to like kind of slow down and speed up and kind of go in and out of the tempo like you do with real people. And of course this can be fixed with like humanization, or I know lots of the newer and best like real drum plugins already do kind of this humanization feel thing. But if you're like, oh no, I want like an EDM kick drum, then you gotta stay with it. So I really recommend don't worry about anyone yelling at you for over quantizing your stuff, especially if it fits with the vibe of what you're making. But yeah, this is Future Sight. Up next, by the time I do the next mix breakdown, the album will be out, and I'll just go track by track, release them over a couple weeks, and I'm really excited to do all those and for you guys to hear everything. When the song comes out, you'll be able to stream it wherever you like to stream things. Napster, Pandora, all those. I already made that joke, but I'm making it again on this video. And if you want to check out more stuff I do, you can follow me on Instagram at Max Windsor Music. I post a lot of other shorter process video things there. And you can also go to my website, maxwindsor.live, and say what's up. But yeah, that's Future Sight. Thank you.